In the past few weeks, major locust attacks have been witnessed in several countries in Western and South Asia and also in East Africa. Faced with the worst such crisis in decades, Pakistan and Somalia have declared locust emergencies. In Pakistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan directed necessary measures to be taken on an emergency basis in view of the destruction caused by locusts to the crops. He ordered formation of a high-level committee to take decisions at the federal level to eliminate the insects. The Pakistani government has approved a national action plan of $7.3 billion to overcome the crisis.
Somalia declared the invasion of locusts as a national emergency Sunday. Locusts have devastated food supplies in one of the poorest and most vulnerable regions of the world. A statement from Somalia's Agriculture Ministry said the move is due to current upsurge of locusts, which constitute a major threat to the fragile food security in the country. The statement added food sources for people and their livestock are under threat. Somalia is the first nation in East Africa to embark on a national mobilization drive to combat the swarm of locusts.
Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia are at the center of this latest outbreak. You can see in this video just how massive the locust swarms have been across the region.
These bugs have infested farmland and destroyed crops. Farmers are calling on the international community to help prevent a food crisis.
Another earthquake rattled Puerto Rico today. A magnitude 5 earthquake hit off the southwestern coast of Puerto Rico. This comes as the island has been trying to rebuild from a series of quakes and tremors over the past month. Some of them caused small landslides, power outages, and severely cracked homes.
3.6 earthquake in Anza at 4:59 this afternoon. That's near Temecula. It was felt in Hemet too. There have been more than a dozen aftershocks in the past 4 hours, but so far, no reports of damage.
In New Zealand, hundreds of people, including many tourists, have been evacuated after heavy rains caused severe flooding. So Ian Lee is following this and much more from London. Ian, what can you tell us?
Good morning, Laura. Yes, heavy rains have led to severe flooding and a state of emergency there. Earlier today, New Zealand authorities evacuated more than 2,000 people from their homes and farms in the south of the country. In other parts, rivers and mudslides destroyed roads and stranded hundreds of tourists. Emergency crews worked around the clock to rescue them by helicopter. In the past 60 hours, more than 3 feet of rain has pounded the region. Some areas could see another foot of rain before it's expected to let up later today.
A state that's been crying out for rain has been soaked today. Heavy falls have been recorded across huge parts of the New South Wales coast. Much of it is welcome, but it's also caused flash flooding in some areas. Byron Bay was swamped, something many locals say they haven't seen before. And there's more to come.
The rain came as no surprise in Byron Bay, but the flooding did. Locals say they weren't expecting water to get into their homes and businesses.
We came in, it was like a little island surrounded by water. Obviously we had a ton of rain last night.
This is worse than Cyclone Debbie here, what's happened overnight.
The town received more than 280 millimetres in just 24 hours. Heavy rain and a high tide saw roads cut and some shopkeepers scrambling to save stock.
When we turned up to work, we didn't expect it to actually get so far into the shop.
At Glenray, north of Coffs Harbour, the landscape was one of contrast. Swollen waterways flowed against the backdrop of blackened bushland ravaged by fire in November. It's a huge relief for people like Kay Cayley, who've just experienced the driest year they can remember.
Our 3 dams were really low, and this particular one here had no water in it, just cracks.
In early January, there were 150 fires burning in New South Wales, and the number of firefighters responding to them soon reached well over 3,000. Today, there are 40 fires still ablaze and 1,200 firefighters on the ground. The rain is welcome on fire grounds, but doesn't come without risk.
Fire crews in New South Wales and the ACT face volatile conditions today as some residents return to confront the aftermath of the massive blaze. The towns of Bredbow and Michelego, southeast of Canberra, are tonight still on edge, with spot fires threatening homes and cutting the Monero Highway.
An orange sunrise over Bredbow shrouded in smoke. Crews working through the night and into the morning, battling a fire that can only be described as savage. In nearby Bumbalong, it's left its devastating mark. Anika Safe and her family returned to find the remains of their home. Of more concern, they didn't get their animals out.
We're just looking for any other animals we've got and seeing what we've got left of our property. I knew it'd be hard, but I didn't think it'd be this hard. Yeah.
But a moment of joy, 2 of the family's goats turning up safe and well and ready for a feed. David Davies watched the fire come down from the northwest at a speed and ferocity he's never seen before. He says it was war.
There was heat, there were explosions, there was flame. I came over here this morning expecting to see no houses, and how people didn't die here yesterday is beyond me.
The strain of this summer is written over everyone and the land. Right now, fireys are dealing with flare-ups down the valley, and that wind is back. Make no mistake, the battle lines are still drawn. It's a battle driven by the Aurora Valley fire that started in the ACT and crossed the border. This shot from a plane shows that fire inching its way towards Canberra's southern suburbs, having already burnt out 23% of the ACT's landmass.
There are still days and possibly weeks of firefighting ahead of us.
Containment lines are now in place between Thawa and Canberra's southern suburbs. Near Candelo in the Bega Valley, Ben Lawrence left his property yesterday, deciding it couldn't be defended. He returned today, fearing the worst.
But I guess until you get your eyes on your own property, it's kind of hard to imagine what could be there waiting for you.
Waiting for him, a property scorched around the edges but with no major damage. Others nearby not so lucky, the remnants in a growing toll of homes lost. Ruth Wynne-Williams, 9 News.
Live in Frederick County, but first let's go to Avajoy Burnett live in Westminster with a look at the damage there. Avajoy.
Hey there, guys. We have been roving around in Carroll County all day, specifically here in Westminster, where officials are telling us that the damage is concentrated to about an 8-block radius. We want to show you what that looks like. If you look at this tree right here, you see this huge branch that snapped. That's how powerful the winds were earlier this morning. And then this huge branch, it then fell right over here in this driveway, feet away from this family's home. They tell us this is where they usually park a car, but they didn't decide to do it last night. Right now, it is cleanup time for not only this family, but many others.
Counting my blessings today.
It's standard operating procedure. After a storm, the chainsaws rev up. For this family with a newborn, Mom is just happy she didn't move her car last night.
It was really quick, the noise and the rain, and then it was suddenly over, and I'm pretty sure I heard the thump of that. And when I came out, I was just like, well, I'm glad I didn't park my car there, because that's where I always park it.
The common theme in Westminster this morning was utter disbelief.
Oh, it was really loud. It was, I don't know, like a boom or something like that.
First, the tornado warnings lit up people's phones. Carroll County schools sent back-to-back alerts to parents. Some students huddled in the basement. And then there was the noise.
It's like 1, 2, 3, boom. I shake my house like, pop! And suddenly you can see like how much is a mess.
The powerful winds, as quick as they were, left a mark. Roofs flew off buildings. This one landed in the middle of Main Street.
You guys are leaving? Rick and Nicole, good evening. We are live along Jesse Smith Road right now, and first responders were called to this property after one of these large pine trees toppled through the side of a home that's directly behind us. And it's hard to even see that house because of all of the debris and the tree limbs that are blocking our view. And then in a completely separate incident, a car driving along this roadway over here became entangled in a power line and toppled over. Everyone is okay, but these are just a couple of examples of the damage here in Frederick County. At 7:45 Friday morning, a tornado warning issued in Frederick County. Fire and rescue crews closed several roads near the intersection of Route 70 and Route 80 after receiving reports of wires down, and much of Route 80 remains closed tonight. It was all hands on deck over here. First responders from New Market, Green Valley, and Carroll County were dispatched to a farm property on Fingerboard Road. Chopper 13 was over the property, which probably suffered the most damage. You can see a barn completely destroyed and many of the other buildings collapsed. In all, crews responded to over 20 calls for downed trees, power lines, and damaged buildings. The Frederick County Division of Parks and Recreation announced that Old National Pike Park is closed due to storm damage.
We are going to begin tonight with breaking news. A powerful storm system is leaving a path of destruction from the Florida Panhandle to Virginia. There are reports tonight of 10 tornadoes in the Carolinas after dozens hit Mississippi and Alabama Wednesday. At least 3 people have been killed. More than 100,000 customers are without power. And states of emergency have been declared in parts of Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Tonight, everyone who lives near rivers and lakes in the Tennessee Valley is being warned to prepare for flooding. Janet Shamlian leads us off tonight from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Man versus Mother Nature, a tornado at the door in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Strong storms tearing across the southeast today. Damaging winds overturned 18-wheelers, toppling billboards and taking down power lines. A hole ripped right through the roof of these apartments.
It is bad. Oh, God, it's bad over there. I mean, it's trees pulled up from the root and just thrown. I mean, they on top of buildings.
In North Carolina, air traffic controllers were forced to evacuate the tower at the Charlotte airport.
We are essentially a ground stop due to potential tornadoes.
At schools in the danger zone, students sheltered in hallways. The storms first slammed Mississippi, a tornado there cutting an 8-mile path. Another twister in Alabama, more homes in pieces. So far, 3 deaths from the storm, including a Tennessee teacher after a tree fell on a bus. In Georgia, fierce winds downed a large tree onto one of Atlanta's busiest interstates. Beyond tornadoes, rising floodwaters damaged homes in Tennessee, swamped roads in Kentucky, and in South Carolina, fire crews rescued people as rivers overflowed.
Here in Spartanburg, trees like this 100-year-old oak are down all over town, and this one split a home in 2. Fortunately, the family who lives here was not here at the time. They were down the street at another home where they took shelter. Neighbors say there was very little warning.
I was at work and I seen this and I just knew something was wrong. So I was like, come on, let's go.
Tornado had come through, so I left work, come home and find all this damage. So I hear that the neighbors down the road there got way worse damage than we got. So of course it's leaking in our house, our trees got uprooted, we've got all kind of damage. Our camper, of course, is destroyed. We're just praising God nobody got hurt.
So the trailer was sitting right here and it landed back there, and it took all this out in its path. It's crazy. Like my husband, that was the first thing he said. He was like, but I didn't move the trailer. Why? And so then we realized it was more substantial than we had thought. And he left work, and obviously I did to come assess the damage. We have been inside. It's windows knocked out, glass all over the floor, a lot of water damage that we're hearing on the ceiling, especially upstairs above the garage. I guess as you can see where the major damage is. And then
Wuhan, China, a sprawling city of 11 million, bigger than New York or London. Testimony to China's rise as an economic superpower. Wuhan's a major transport hub known as China's thoroughfare, and the city where the potentially deadly coronavirus outbreak began. December last year, it was in this fish market where the first major cluster of cases was reported. Medical officials are still uncertain where the virus came from, but today the site and the city are under strict quarantine. One single location setting off an international alarm.
We begin tonight with the growing concern as the toll from that deadly coronavirus now grows, spreading from Wuhan, China, and tonight that first case here in the U.S.
As the highly contagious virus known as 2019 nCoV spread, Chinese officials who'd been slow to respond finally began taking extraordinary measures that only an authoritarian regime can do, quarantining tens of millions of its own citizens. In the early days, Bob Woodruff flew to Wuhan, nearly everyone on the flight wearing face masks.
So since I got off the plane,
here in Wuhan, we've had no screening. They haven't been looking for any testing any temperatures, anything.
Flights were still leaving the city then, but that soon stopped as the unprecedented lockdown began, beginning with flights. The airport empty, train stations a ghost town. The streets of this once bustling city of Wuhan almost totally deserted. Some taking matters into their own hands, literally walling themselves off from the outside world, and temperature checkpoints now a common sight across Asia. More than 50 million people barred from leaving Hubei province alone, but the virus still spread. Now every province and territory in the world's most populous country has cases. In less than 2 months, more than 24 countries affected, from Australia to Cambodia to France and the United States.
The first confirmed U.S. case of that mysterious virus tracked here to Washington state.
Countries are desperately trying to keep the virus at bay. Airports across the U.S. screening passengers for potential symptoms. At least 54 airlines have now suspended or reduced service to China. And now the government advising against any travel to the mainland. But still, it's spreading. The situation's so urgent, China's built 2 new hospitals in a matter of days. This extraordinary time-lapse aired on state media, showing over 2,300 more beds being added this week. But that still isn't enough to deal with patient demand. And now this stadium in Wuhan is being turned into a makeshift hospital. Elsewhere, in overcrowded clinics, medical professionals in hazmat suits treat patients lining the hallways. No precaution, no protection, too extreme. The lives of people here have been suspended. Crucial medical supplies and food sent directly to some homes as Chinese authorities enforce the lockdown. Despite the millions stranded, the people of Wuhan are encouraging each other from their windows, shouting to keep fighting on. And the only ones lucky enough to be able to escape from here now are foreign nationals, those with the right passport to get out. More than 500 Americans have already paid thousands of dollars to evacuate from the infected region, with more flights expected this week. US medical personnel at the ready with hazmat suits. All who take the flight now have to be quarantined for at least 2 weeks. But some choosing not to take the ticket out. Doug Perez, an American in Wuhan, refused to leave his girlfriend and his dog behind.
Just things are looking really bad, and they still look bad. We go over there, and we say we're going to take the dog for a walk, and they say no. They say you can't leave, and that's kind of dawned on me, like how bad this could get.
Normally my community is usually very, very full of people all over the place running around.
Justin Steese, a US citizen, and his family are stuck in Wuhan. He had the option to take his newborn back to America, but his wife Ling is Chinese, and just days ago she was told she wouldn't be able to join them and would have to stay behind.
Ling and I were very much upset about the result. First time I've seen her cry about this the entire time. There's no way I would ever separate a mother and her 1-month-old baby.
But now the US is allowing Steese and his wife to get back to America. But for now, the Chinese are holding up the process. Back in Hong Kong, a city that faced the full force of the deadly SARS outbreak in 2003, residents like Henry are taking few chances.
Now Hong Kong people has the alertness about the virus. 18 years ago, we don't have so many mainlanders coming to Hong Kong, right? But after 18 years, we have many tourists, and the relationship between Hong Kong and China is much more closer than 18 years ago.
But infections for this new type of coronavirus have surpassed SARS, and it's spreading faster too. Hong Kong trying to protect itself. Ferry boats and trains suspended, flights to the mainland halved, and a run on protective gear. Hundreds of people are now lined all the way around the block because this store here has just got a supply of face masks. You can see them here, but they're being tightly rationed. If you have a look up here on the wall, it's basically telling people we've tried our best, we don't have any more masks, and that's the situation across Hong Kong. Medical workers in Hong Kong are now on strike, demanding that all borders with mainland China be closed. The global financial centre just recorded its first death from the virus. And as it continues to spread, the World Health Organization declaring a global emergency.
In the last 24 hours, we had the most cases in a single day since the outbreak started.
While the coronavirus remains less deadly than the seasonal flu, scientists say it's just as contagious. So for now, this is what passes for life in Wuhan. The largest quarantine effort in the history of mankind failed to contain this virus. China admitting it was too slow to acknowledge it had a problem and too late to warn its own people and the world, leaving many to wonder what happens in the increasingly likely chance that this virulent outbreak can't be contained. What can we do to stop it in our interconnected world?
Now the Chinese doctor who sounded the alarm on novel coronavirus has died from the disease he was so concerned about. Early on, Dr. Li Wenyang warned his colleagues that the symptoms he was seeing in several patients were similar to SARS. Shortly after, local authorities tried to silence him, some even calling his warnings fake news. While Dr. Li was only 34, a new report shows that the median age of coronavirus patients appears to be between 49 and 56, and that cases in children have been rare. There are also new reports that the Chinese government is doubling down on its efforts to contain the virus, including house-to-house searches in Wuhan, now essentially a ghost town.
Overnight news, the first American has died from the mysterious coronavirus. The U.S. Embassy confirming to NBC News a 60-year-old who'd contracted the virus in Wuhan died Thursday. And this morning, growing fears the virus may be spreading here at home. According to the CDC at Travis Air Force Base near San Francisco, 5 evacuees rescued from the epicenter earlier this week have been rushed to local hospitals after showing symptoms.
We're being very aggressive, using quarantine measures that haven't been used in 50 years.
Friday, 3 more planes full of evacuees from Wuhan landed at military bases in San Diego, San Antonio, and Omaha. Across the country, hundreds of Americans remain in quarantine. American Yulin Yin's one of them. He arrived Wednesday, still in good spirits despite being stuck for 2 weeks at a military base in San Diego.
The weather is great, better than Minnesota where I came from. So I don't have complaint.
Yin Lin says he's showing no symptoms, but officials are taking no chances. There's much we still don't know about the virus.
That includes exactly how it spreads, how deadly it is, whether it's commonly transmitted by patients who are not yet displaying symptoms, and other issues.
Questions causing trouble at sea. South of Tokyo, a dream holiday turned nightmare. Aboard the Diamond Princess, more than 60 confirmed cases, including at least a dozen Americans. In total, more than 3,700 passengers and crew either quarantined on the ship or hospitalized. Another cruise liner quarantined off the coast of Hong Kong. And in Newark, New Jersey, 4 Chinese nationals escorted off a Royal Caribbean cruise, some on stretchers, even though they showed no symptoms of the virus.
A shortage that poses a threat to the containment of coronavirus, an issue that the World Health Organization says it is dealing with. Earlier this week, it said it had started sending masks, gloves, respirators, protective isolation gowns and test kits to countries requiring assistance.
Today in the Senate chamber, an historic moment.
The United States Senate was made for moments like this.
The final vote on Donald Trump's impeachment.
I hope we will look back on this vote and say this was the day the fever began to break.
This president is such a menace that you must ignore, indeed sacrifice, the truth to maintain his favor.
The world's greatest deliberative body,
not guilty, not guilty, not guilty,
took just over half an hour to clear President Trump of both charges. Immediately after the vote, Trump, triumphant, retweeted this meme suggesting he'll be president in perpetuity.
That tweet was classic Trump, and really it shows his state of mind, that after being impeached and now acquitted, he's just dancing on the heads of those who tried to get him.
Trump's lawyer called it a victory for the president, the office of the president, and the Constitution.
We're very pleased with the result. We're glad this is behind us. We're glad this is behind the country.
We've been going through this now for over 3 years,
It was evil, it was corrupt, it was dirty cops, it was leakers and liars, and this should never, ever happen to another president, ever. I don't know that other presidents would have been able to take it. Some people said no, they wouldn't have. We went through hell unfairly, did nothing wrong, did nothing wrong. I've done things wrong in my life, I will admit. Not purposely, but I've done things wrong. But this is what the end result is. So, you can take that home, honey, maybe we'll frame it. It's the only good headline I've ever had in the Washington Post.
The Crown Prince of Bahrain, Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, visited Pope Francis in the Vatican. The meeting was very cordial and lasted about 30 minutes. The prince explained that in spite of Bahrain's Muslim majority, Christians are not seen merely as guests, but as citizens. The prince gifted Pope Francis a small coffer with geometric figures evoking the seasons. The Pope gave the prince a medallion with an inscription about peace. Before departing, the prince invited Pope Francis to visit his country.
I hope you will visit them, and maybe next time we would be honored to receive you.
Currently under construction in Bahrain is the Catholic Cathedral of Our Lady of Arabia. It is being built on land the king gifted. It might be finished by next year. Catholics dream that the Pope will inaugurate it once it is complete.
Pope Francis participated in a meeting in the Vatican with the director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, and economy ministers from around the world. The Pope delivered a strong speech which emphasized that people cannot sit back in a world in which more and more people are plunged in misery, when the wealth of a small minority continues to increase.
El principal mensaje de esperanza que quiero compartir con ustedes es precisamente este. Se trata de problemas solucionables y no de ausencia de recursos. No existe un determinismo que nos condene a la inequidad universal. Permítame repetirlo, no estamos condenados a la inequidad universal.
Therefore, he appealed for collective responsibility. He asked each person to do his or her part in putting a finger in the wound of the problem with a very concrete statement.
Si existe la pobreza extrema en medio de la riqueza, también riqueza extrema, es porque hemos permitido que la brecha se amplíe hasta convertirse en la mayor de la historia.
The Pope criticized welfare only being for a select few. He asked financial organizations and governments to work for the common good, social justice, and integral development so they do not become structures of sin.
Las estructuras de pecado hoy incluyen repetidos recortes de impuestos para las personas más ricas, justificados muchas veces en nombre de la inversión y desarrollo. Paraísos fiscales para las ganancias privadas y corporativas. Y, por supuesto, la posibilidad de corrupción por parte de algunas de las empresas más grandes del mundo, no pocas veces en sintonía con algún sector político dominante.
Finally, he asked for a renewal of the economy and finances so they collaborate in searching for humanizing solutions to humanity's problems.